It's time to talk sports. It's Hacksaw's Headlines, a panorama of the world of sports, stories, comments, and opinions.
Touchdown, San Diego!
Now, here's iconic sports talk show host Lee Hacksaw Hamilton and co-host John Riley.
Who wants to talk sports on a Monday? We do. From the DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Center studios in San Diego, we welcome you to Hacksaw's Headlines, our Monday bonus podcast, brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers, 9 stores in San Diego to serve you. You've got projects. They have all the materials. When it comes time to do unique and creative things, think DIXIELINE Lumber. And by North County Eye Center, Poway and Escondido, where they are offering free eye exams if you call them now. Make sure you tell them Hacksaw sent you. John Riley joins us in studio coming off a great sports weekend. I called it a lost sports weekend. I'll tell you why at the end of the podcast. We have a ton of things that we're going to discuss in the next hour, and you are going to be involved. Couple of business items. X marks the spot. X, a.k.a. Twitter. You're all on some form of social media. I would invite you who are on X to become one of my followers. We're trying to push the boulder over the hill. We're trying to get to 10,000 followers on X, a.k.a. Twitter. Hey, if you're on social media, follow me at Hacksaw1090, at Hacksaw1090. Second item, you like sports? You should read my website, especially today, LeeHacksawHamilton.com. It's all written. I want you to read the best 15 minutes in sports. One man's opinion column, take part in my mini polls. And while you're on my website, there's a big orange box on the homepage. Orange is my favorite color. Register to join Hacksaw's Insiders Group. And when we are done with the Monday bonus podcast, you are going to take over this podcast. John Riley's going to tell you about what we created months and months ago, which is kind of exploding. It's called Fans Forum.
Fans Forum. So if you got a question or comment in the world of sports for Lee, type it in the live chat. Now, I just got a note on the screen that we're not streaming to X today. Apparently, we need to pay a premium subscription to Elon Musk in order to do that. So you'll need to type in your comments on Facebook and on YouTube, and we'll get you involved in Fans Forum at the end of Hacksaw's Headlines.
Fans Forum belongs to you. Take advantage of the unique opportunity. It's just like a phone call to Sports Talk Radio. We let you ask questions, express opinions. Fans Forum. The minute we hit your hot button, go into the chat box, write in a question. John Riley, we got a ton of topics on the table. It is the All-Star break in Major League Baseball. We're going to go a lot of different directions talking baseball, and we've got a lot of other sports stories to cover. Start.
I mean, let's talk Padres-Dodgers. Both teams really kind of backed into the All-Star game. You know, really disappointing to finish the first half.
They're skidding to the All-Star break. The Dodgers are in enormous trouble right now with their pitching staff. They have 16 pitchers on the disabled list. And here they are. They thought a couple were about to turn the corner. Walker Buehler is not making progress at Camelback Ranch in Arizona. He, of course, is on the disabled list. The hip injury is gone. They're trying to work on mechanics, trying to get his velocity back. That has not worked. Dustin May was about to progress to bullpen sessions at Camelback Ranch, rushed to a hospital over the weekend, surgery on his esophagus, torn esophagus, suffered while he was eating dinner and was taken to a hospital. No physical activity for the next 2 months. He's done for the rest of the season. Won't be back till next spring training as he tries to ramp up from 2 elbow surgeries. The only piece of good news, Clayton Kershaw, first rehab start Oklahoma City, John. 3 innings, no hits, 5 strikeouts, no problems the next 2 days after the start where you throw a bullpen, a light bullpen. So far, so good. Kershaw's going to make another rehab start at Oklahoma City in the Pacific Coast League this coming Friday. And if that goes with no setbacks, maybe coming out of the All-Star break, he rejoins the rotation. They are in terrible trouble with their pitching staff, which also then leads you to the next statement. Are they going to make a deal? Are they going to go get a pitcher? The Padres, to me, it's weird. The Padres have 5 All-Stars, and the Padres are a 500 baseball team.
No, it's crazy.
And the Padres are kind of on the brink holding on to the last rung of the ladder and not trying to fall off in terms of the wild card chase. They win games, play surprisingly exciting baseball, and then they lose series. There is no answer. They're 50-49. And the other thing is they played a lot more games than virtually everybody else in baseball. Everybody's got games in hand on them. The All-Star break comes at the right time for them. Machado needs to get rested. This pitching staff needs to take a deep breath. Luis Arraez has got the issue with the thumb problem. He's pulled himself out of the All-Star game. Fernando Tatis is going to have another MRI. The pain where the stress fracture was in the thigh bone has gone away, but he's not doing any baseball-related activities. In fact, he's yet to be allowed to run. So this is still a long process there. So, I mean, the Dodgers are in just huge trouble. And I don't know how the Padres are going to find other players to add to the roster right now because they're in just a real tight fit. And we have not talked about Musgrove, who's only throwing off the front of the mound, is only throwing some fastballs in bullpen sessions, has thrown no of the hard breaking stuff, which led first to the shoulder problem, then the elbow problem. And, of course, Darvish reportedly is in Japan because of a family illness situation. We don't know when he's coming back. I assume he's working out on his own because that's the kind of guy he is. But they desperately need starting pitching at this point in time. So, John, here's the magic wand. Sprinkle some dust, solve the Dodger problems and the Padre problems.
Well, it's nice to hear Clayton Kershaw is looking good. I mean, how old is he, by the way?
36 plus, old man on his arm, he says.
Yeah, so, he's coming back. That's some hope for the Dodgers. But this Dustin May injury is weird. I mean, I've never heard of a torn esophagus. I mean, I remember when George H.W. Bush choked on a pretzel in Japan, but I've never heard of a torn esophagus.
Yeah.
Have you?
No, it was just absolutely strange. And he got sick at dinner and felt horrible. He called the Dodger staff. They brought him in. They did whatever they did in terms of examination extras. They put him right into surgery.
Well, it was maybe like a bone or something that scraped the inside of the throat.
Something tore tissue in the esophagus. Yes,
that's crazy. I mean, especially bad luck, with the Dustin May injury.
The kids can't get away from the black cloud.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the Dodgers are going to make a deal, but are we still only talking about Quantrill and Eflin? I mean, are there other big names that are kind of coming up
at this point? No. But again, we're 2 weeks out from the trade deadline, and maybe somebody else will get into seller mode. The problem is there's so many teams in baseball that are right around the 500 level, damn Padres included.
Yes.
That there's a lot of teams that say, well, I'm not going to blow this sucker up. I'm going to try to stay the course, and maybe I'll rent a pitcher that might push me into postseason play. So, but the names that we have talked about in the last 10 days, the Cal Quantrills of Colorado, who I really like, Zach Eflin of Tampa Bay, the Mets, whatever they're going to do with Quintana or Sean Manaea, those are guys you can probably get at affordable prices. But from the Padres' perspective, everybody they talk to wants one of the young guys in the farm system. Unless the Padres do a U-turn and change their mind and say, okay, we're going to get quality and we're going to give you Hassan Kim. Or we're going to get quality, and we'll give you the young catcher Luis Campusano because they got another catcher deep in the farm system. But we're not giving you Ethan Salas. We're not giving you Leo DeVries. And we're just going to go the course with the two number one picks that are struggling in the minors right now in Rob Snelling and Dylan Lasco. And I think that mandate comes from above A.J. Preller. So, we spin back to what we talked about last week. Would you trade Hassan Kim because he is a walk free agent at the end of the year? But I only trade him if I'm getting a really quality starter. I happen to think Quantrill has evolved into a very trustworthy starting pitcher. I might do that. But I wouldn't deal him for Sean Manaea. I wouldn't deal him for Jose Quintana. The New York Mets, terrible. So that's where we are. And the other problem is if there's somebody really good out there, the guys up the road who've got assets to trade and can take on salary, a.k.a. the Dodgers, you're going to have to compete against those guys off the field at the trade table at the deadline, in addition to having to beat them on the field.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, it's crazy. And it's some of those guys, like, why would we give up a lot to get a Cal Quantrill? I mean,
he's
sure.
got 2 years left of ownership.
But still, he's kind of like a number 4 type of starter. He's, and you could get him, and he can go south on you pretty easily.
I don't know, pal. Yeah, he's got a 3.01 ERA at Coors Field.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Well, you see, dummy.
Well, you would
Read
know.
my website. You would know this stuff.
You would know.
But that he, of those guys out there that I just mentioned, he's probably the most trustworthy. And you control him for 2 more years.
True.
And you know him. And you got Ruben Niebla, who I think is a very good pitching coach who can further refine the guy. Maybe that's the guy you go get. Of course, doing so, A.J. Preller has to admit he made a mistake by trading a guy away in the Cleveland package to begin with, which there's nobody left from the Cleveland package, and he gave up Quantrill and Josh Naylor, who's in the All-Star game.
Right.
So
there were 10 former Padres in the All-Star game, according to Kevin Acey's article this morning. And so I'd imagine these other teams are saying, well, hell yeah, Preller is willing to deal his top prospects. I'm going to get me some.
I don't think the ownership will let him deal top prospect. I'll be stunned if a week from now or July 31st that he has been allowed to trade Salas or DeVries, who are the blue chips, but they're way down the road. By the way, sidebar note, the baseball free agent draft, the college, high school kids, that's going on right now. I really like the 2 Padre picks. The Padres drafted 25, and then they drafted 55, and they drafted really well. They got a 6'4" high school pitcher from Oklahoma who's vibrant. He's 94. I looked at him, and it was like I was watching Cole Hamels on video.
Really?
Very impressive. And then the second round, they drafted a 6'8" kid, Texas, Louisiana, 6'8" pitcher, who I was very impressed with, too, who's got, I think, great upside. Now, they're going to have to pay money, significant of their signing pool, to keep these kids from going to Oklahoma State or going to Louisville. But I think both those kids have already told them, we want to sign. So what they did with picks 1 and 2. Now, that's exciting for 30 seconds. The reality is these guys are going to Class A ball or the Arizona Summer League. I mean, they are years away. But these are vibrant, big, hard-throwing high school pitchers. So I was pretty impressed with what the Friars did.
Well, it's kind of a roll of the dice, right? You just try to amass big arms with big talent and hope some of them can make it all the way without getting hurt.
Or some of them can make it here and not have Preller trade them.
Yeah, that too.
The other stat, I went back over the weekend, I wrote about it, just shocking. Of the 8 first-round picks that Preller has had since he became general manager 2015, he's traded 6 of the 8 number 1s to other teams, and those guys are playing pretty well other places.
But it's when the Padres, go back to Josh Naylor for a minute, who we said was an all-star, traded him away, but he didn't fit anywhere in San Diego, right? He couldn't play outfield. We didn't have the DH then. But yeah, he's legit. But he's traded away, what, Trey Turner? Who are some of the other number 1s?
Oh, my God. I don't have the list in front of me, but it's a volume of name players who've gone other places and had success.
Well, think about previous Padre history of all the number 1 draft picks that Towers and some of his predecessors picked that never even panned out. They never even made it to the major leagues. So I like the fact that Preller is aggressive and flexible and trying to turn, essentially straw into gold like Rumpelstiltskin. But, sometimes the deals don't work out.
A lot of times deals don't work out. And the fact you go look at the baseball box scores, there's a lot of ex-Padres, lots of places doing pretty well. All their places. Mm-hmm. And all that, all the picks he's had, and all the free agents he signed, and all the money he spent. And the Padres are 50-49 and not even a wild card team at the All-Star break.
Yeah, that's insane. Insane.
So we have to talk about the negatives along with the positives. So that's the storyline with Padre and Dodger baseball. Feel free, if you're a Padre fan, if you're a Dodger fan, geez, join us in the chat box in Fans Forum. Now, it is the All-Star break, so we're going to do something a little bit different here. Topic number 2.
Topic number 2, yeah, the All-Star break. We're going to have the home run derby, the game, but you want to take a look at who some of these teams are that maybe have surprised us.
Okay, we're going to do a little bit of evaluation here at the All-Star break. We're going to talk about who's had a good first half of the season, who's had a really bad first half of the season, who are the surprises, who are the disappointments. All-Star break, kind of a report card. Yankees, Baltimore, tied for first place, pretty much, in the American League East. That's a war zone. And the fact that Yankees have done this without Garrett Cole and with injuries to Stanton and Anthony Rizzo and then Judge and the minor nagging things with Soto, that's pretty impressive. The Yankees are where they are, right there nipping at the heels of the Orioles. So that's a surprise. I think Cleveland's one of the best teams in baseball nobody knows anything about. Look at the Indians. The Indians have the best bleeping record in the American League.
The Indians?
Indians. The Guardians. I'm sorry, my heart is always somewhere else. Indians-Gardens. Jose Ramirez is one of the most underrated all-stars, superstars in baseball. He's the cornerstone of the anchor. Stephen Kwan leads the American League in hitting, like in the 360s. Now, he was on the DL for a while. He's come back and he's hitting. Cleveland's just got just a unique collection of really young players with a low payroll. Boston had a miserable start to the season, and just people, the media in Boston was just berating the ownership that you need to blow this thing up. Well, the ownership said these kids are going to get better, and these kids have gotten better, led by Jared Duran. So Boston, to me, is a surprise team. You tell me how Houston has 50 wins this season, with 6 of their top 7 pitchers having been on the disabled list with crippling injuries. And then, of course, we've obviously got the really good Phillies team, which is 62-34, just bashing the daylights out of everybody at Citizens Bank Ballpark. And they've got 4 really established starting pitchers. I think Dave Dombrowski is one of the best general managers in baseball. He never gets any credit. And for the Dodgers to be 56-41 with 16 pitchers on the disabled list, they have only one established starter in their rotation, James Paxton, the street free agent. Everybody else is gone. And the Dodgers are still 56-41, and half their batting order isn't hitting either. Top of the batting order is at they get to the All-Star breaks hitting 284. The bottom of the batting order is hitting 208. Ooh. And the bullpen's got holes in it. So those, to me, John, Baltimore Yankees in the East, Cleveland, what Boston has grown into, the ones that have survived the injuries, how dominant Philadelphia is, those are the ones to me that I think are the most pleasant surprises in Major League Baseball.
Talking about surprises, I mean, what about the Royals? I mean, they're doing pretty darn well.
They were, and it's kind of like they hit a wall. And they've had some pitching injuries, and they are just now a shade above 500. They've kind of regressed. So unless they do something at the deadline, they get somebody back healthy. Though Seth Lugo, ex-Padre, is in the All-Star game.
Yeah, good for him.
But as well as they played the first 2.5 to 3 months of the season, they're just not the same team right now. So I don't know that I call them a big surprise. Out of the gate, yes, but not so much now.
Yeah. So, and then in the National League Central, is Milwaukee still leading that division? I mean, that just seems to be kind of a mess. Is there any surprise team there?
That's a surprise to me. There is I guess I'm going to use the word surprise because of injuries. Milwaukee's had so many everyday players get hurt, and they started the season having traded away Corbin Burns, having lost Brandon Woodruff. They're down starters, and they got 55 wins. They're 55-45 here at the break. So to me, I think they have to go down as a surprise, considering what happened in the pitching staff. And Atlanta's got 53 wins, and Atlanta does not have its ace, Spencer Strider, gone for the year with the elbow, does not have the MVP, Ronald Acuna, gone for the year, does not have the other young outfielder, Michael Hill. He's not been able to stay on the field and stay healthy. And Atlanta's got 53 wins. So they, to me, I think are a bit of a surprise team too.
Yeah, I mean, just those pitchers on that team are incredible. I didn't realize, how much depth they have of really ace pitchers, because it was Sale, and then who was the kid that is leading the league in ERA? Lopez?
Yes, Ray Lopez.
Yeah.
And then Schwellenbach, who pitched in the middle of that series, was pretty dominant too. You look at their roster, that's pretty much all homegrown talent.
Yeah, I love watching Ozzie Albies. That little guy, man, he can launch bombs. It's unbelievable. Yeah.
So anyhow, those are the best teams we talked about. These are the surprise teams. Let's talk about the disappointments. Tampa Bay, all those big bats ravaged by injuries. Not having Wander Franco has been catastrophic, and he's out of baseball. Tampa Bay's 43-52, and they've had a lot of pitching injuries too. So that's a real disappointment. I thought Detroit was going to arrive this year in the American League Central, and their pitchers just have not lived up to their reputation. Their big power-hitting first baseman Spencer Torkelson got sent back to AAA baseball for a while. They're just not pitching and they're not hitting. Cincinnati's been a disappointment. They've been building towards really good things with a lot of homegrown products, and they lost so many of their cornerstone kids in spring training, including the shortstop McLean. He's not played with a season-threatening shoulder injury. L.A. De La Cruz has just been fabulous to watch, but there's so many guys in Cincinnati just have been all dinged up and have been on and off the disabled list. Obviously, the disgrace of Colorado, what ownership has done there, what the Oakland A's have done, and the Padres. I'm really disappointed. To me, they've underachieved. How the hell can you have 5 All-Stars and be 50-49 and be, for the third time this season, on an extended losing streak? So, anybody else like to add and want to argue with me about disappointments?
Well, what about the Texas Rangers? I mean, they're the World Series champs, and I think last I checked, they're still below 500.
Wreckage of injuries. No pitchers. None. Corey Seager's been hurt at least 3 times. Their outfielders, their power-hitting outfielders have had injury. Adolis Garcia, those guys have been hurt. So they've just never been able to put a full team on the field. If it were the team that won the World Series last year, they'd probably be in first place or fighting for first place. But instead, they got their best part of their team is on the disabled list.
Yeah, well, then the Mets, too, another bomb of a team. I mean, they got all that payroll, and how are they doing? They're kind of on the cusp.
They've had a better last 2 months than a horrid start. But their problem is they're living on borrowed time, and they got so many journeyman starting pitchers. And again, these are the guys that got rid of Max Scherzer and Verlander and all these guys a year ago. And I looked at the rotation opening day. I said, this is what you're putting on the field. You're not going to win. I think this is a transition year, and I think the contracts are expiring and deferred money's expiring, and I think the Mets are going to dive back in to free agency and crank their payroll up again. But this is it's a better team right now than it was from Memorial Day weekend. But I don't think it's a playoff team by any stretch, and their future is going to be their future. And they got to deal with Peter Alonso because he's a walk free agent represented by you-know-who.
Scott Boras.
Who takes his people to?
Free agency.
You got it, brother.
Yeah.
So that's where we are. So that's the All-Star break. We're going to enjoy Home Run Derby. The game is going to be fascinating. Corbin Burns, the ex-Milwaukee Brewer, now with the Orioles, will start against Pittsburgh's rookie Paul Skeens with his 100-mile-an-hour fastball. So that'll be fun, at least for the first inning, to see how Skeens does against the superstars, and we'll have some Padres there. So you got a comment about your favorite team who started fast, hasn't done well? Who do you blame? Feel free, jump on board. Fans Forum. Do you know the best part of July, once we get beyond vacation and all that? It's the NFL.
The NFL, man, it's just around the corner here.
Next topic.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable. The NFL is 24/7 all year long.
Chargers, first team to open preseason training camp tomorrow.
Wow.
Jim Harbaugh. Debut. Chargers move into their 150,000 square foot practice facility, El Segundo. It's really state-of-the-art. And this is something Hispanos had to pay for. Nobody gave him any money for the first time in his life. He had to float alone to make this happen, but it's supposed to be a phenomenal state-of-the-art facility. So Harbaugh, with all of his off-season speeches after he got hired from the University of Michigan, now we look at the roster and we find out what they're really like on the field, and this is going to be a bit of a challenge. This coach is a proven commodity. His quarterback, Justin Herbert, is a proven commodity. The question is, does he have enough at all the other critical positions? And that's what the next 7 weeks are going to be about for the Chargers. Do they have the right running backs to replace the do-everything Austin Eckler? Can they replace the 100-reception guys? It'll be a different receiving core because there is no Keenan Allen, there is no Mike Williams. I like their offensive front. They have 3 number 1 draft picks, and they move Trey Pipkins inside to offensive guard, where I think that big, wide body is going to do well. Got to prove a little bit about whether or not they can stop the run defensively, because it's all new defensive tackles, and they do have the perimeter rush guys. There's no doubt that you got Bosa, and you got Khalil Mack, and you got the kid Tua Pelutu from USC, who had a very good rookie season. Very different secondary. I think the question is, can they be tough guys defensively? And they're replacing a bunch of people in the interior of that defensive front. So I'm fascinated to see what the Bolts are going to be. It's easy for me to say, love Harbaugh, great respect for Justin Herbert, but, you need a 53-man roster, and I just don't know that the Chargers have enough of the right guys at this point to be a playoff team. Please don't mention to me Super Bowl. That's absurd in a very, very tough division. So a lot of things that they got to get answers to, questions that start tomorrow, first day in the facility and on the practice field for Jim Harbaugh and the Bolts. And John Riley says,
I don't know what the heck to make of the Chargers yet. It's still such a mystery, But I'm just going back to Harbaugh and kind of his scheme, his brand. Should we expect the ratio of run-pass to change this coming year than it's been in the past?
They're going to try. That's why they drafted Joe Alt. That's why they have 3 number ones in the front. That's why they have blocking tight ends and jumbo packages and all that. And they got tough guy running back Gus Edwards, but he's got a lot of miles on him, and he's coming off a knee situation in Baltimore. And he doesn't have a history of staying healthy during the course of the season. They do have J.K. Dobbins. They got the young running back Isaiah Spiller behind him. So this will be fascinating to see if they, from a roster standpoint, John, are a complete football team. I don't think they are right now. Now, I do think they'll run it some. I think they'll better pass protect Herbert. But then that spins to the next question. Can you tell me who your star wide receiver is? I like Joshua Palmer, big 6'5" kid, tough guy, catches balls, but he's been dinged. I don't know what to make of Quentin Johnston, the high number 1 draft pick, who dropped more passes last year, just like he dropped passes at TCU. I'm going to be fascinated to see J.D. Chalk, who came from Carolina as a free agent. Guy has a track record of big yardage plays, but he hasn't stayed on the field consistently. Those are your top receivers. There is no Pro Bowler there. So we'll have to see how quickly the group that's supposed to catch balls from Herbert works. And can they run the ball with the consistency they need to allow Herbert to be a great, great quarterback? And I happen to think he's a really fine quarterback. So, and the other side, when the other guys got the ball, you're going to stop them? Because they haven't stopped them in years.
Right.
A big issue. So that's the Charger story. Other football story, news and notes here.
Yeah, around the Mountain West.
Yeah, this is interesting. I think it's the ultimate insult. The Mountain West Conference preseason poll picks San Diego State to finish number 8. I understand nobody knows who's on this roster because they have, went back and counted, they have 37 who have transferred in this year. Some of them came after spring football. So when they get in pads August 1st for the month-long preseason camp at San Diego State, they'll be wearing the colors and hitting with a new playbook and a new head coach. I understand that's why they were voted 8th. I don't understand why nobody paid any attention to the brilliant thing Sean Lewis did at Colorado in 2/3 of a season with Shedeur Sanders, what he did prior to that for 2 straight record-setting years at Kent State, what he did before that at Bowling Green, what he did prior to that at Syracuse. The guy's offenses statistically have been phenomenal. So they're bringing a lot of people in. 37 transfers in, 34 left the program for all wide variety of reasons. Here's the shocker to me. Only 16 of the 34 who've left have signed anywhere. 18 others, no place to go to play. And I tend to think too many kids bailed out on Sean Lewis without giving him a chance to go through spring ball and find out how vibrant this offense could be, might be, etc. Too many people whispered in kids' ears, too many kids to the opinion, new coach, he's not Brady Hoke, I'm not going to stay. 18 Aztecs don't have a place to play, which including the number 1 running back, Anthony McClellan from Cathedral, and Garrett Fountain, who was a multi-year starter at defensive end who bailed really early. Don't understand why kids would do that. So that's the San Diego State headline. It's quite a story at Colorado State. Now, the capitalist co-host here who thinks everything is great with the transfer portal and the NIL. There's a story at Colorado State. Jay Norvell, who I think's done a really good job as a coach in his conference developing offenses. Jay Norvell's got a quarterback that threw for 3,400 yards his first year in the program. And he accused Kansas State of tampering with Brandon Nicolosi, the star quarterback at CSU. Nicolosi threw for 3,600 plus yards, 22 touchdowns, the first time he put the uniform on in Fort Collins. He says a Colorado State quarterback was contacted by Kansas State coaches who offered Nicolosi $600,000 of NIL money to leave, to go to K-State. Now, that's happening in a lot of places. You can't contact a player if his name's not in the transfer portal. Nicolosi's name is not in the transfer portal. So Jay Norville wants the NCAA to go in and say, discipline Kansas State for making illegal coaching contacts with my quarterback who's here in spring football and is not in the transfer portal. Can't allow that to happen. But the Capitalist co-host says everything's fine. So those are the stories at San Diego State and CSU, and it's your turn to respond from left field.
From left field. Okay. First of all, if you're a broadcaster and you've got a great career, and then some other radio station or NFL team offers you big money, I think you should be able to go. I like that. But in this particular case, there are rules with transfer portal. You can't contact. I'm surprised they didn't have like 2 or 3 go-betweens, because you don't ask them directly. You got to have 2 or 3 in the middle, right? And how did the coach at Colorado State get whiff of this?
Evidently, the quarterback said, I am staying. There were rumors that were swirling. And Nicolosi said, I'm staying here. I'm going to be a Ram. We're going to play in the Mountain West Conference. Maybe we're going to win the conference football race. And by the way, the rumors out there are true. I was contacted by Kansas State and a coach. And by the way, my name's not in the portal. I mean, it's an egregious violation, I think.
Oh, it is a violation of the rules, but I just wonder about the rules. But going back to San Diego State, I love head coaches that are innovative and experiment, and they kind of have like a devil may care attitude about trying new things. And I think Sean Lewis is going to be that. This whole Aztec Fast brand, I'm anxious to learn about it. I don't know if they've got the players that can fit the system. I have no clue, but I like what he brings to the table.
It's interesting. We go to his press conferences. I had to bring you to one of these. You're kind of in the working media now. Your hands are dirty, too. You're the one that created this podcast. His press conferences, he talks so fast, it's almost like his offense plays that fast. He just buzzes through whatever the answer to the question is. Next question. And blah, 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 blah. So I'm fascinated. I like him. I was a big Brady Hoke fan. Brady's from old school, different school. This guy is a new breed guy. I'll be fascinated to see how they hit the floor running in the non-conference games, which are going to be hard. And by the way, it's not my job to sell tickets, but by the way, they get Oregon State here. They get Washington State here from the Pac-2, a.k.a. Pac-12, at Snapdragon Stadium. Those are going to be fun football games to go see. So that's the coverage of the Aztecs and Colorado State. We get to halftime. Couple of reminders. This podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers. If you walk through this castle, this palatial estate that we broadcast from, John has this huge freaking studio that he built for podcast, and hell, it's got better equipment than the TV station I work in. But he's done projects. He's done renovations. He's used DIXIELINE lumber. Just 10 seconds, explain how and why.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a homeowner, if you're a contractor and you're doing building, you want to renovate a bedroom, you want to, put new decking in your backyard, they've got it all. They've been in San Diego for over 100 years, Lee.
These are the guys we've done business with. We think you'll be pleased too. DIXIELINE Lumber. And our podcast brought to you by North County Eye Centers of Poway and Escondido. I don't know where you're watching our Zoom podcast from, but I will tell you that regardless of where you live in San Diego County, you're all going to need help with your eyes. And whether that's just a vision test or whether that's something much more significant, because we're all going to have eye difficulties, whether that's cataracts, whether that might be dry eye, whether that's an eye infection. When you need help with your eyes, think North County Eye Center, Poway and Escondido. And right now, for all the people on our podcast, they offer free eye exams. The minute you call, just say, Hacksaw on his podcast was talking North County Eye Center. I'd like to have an eye exam, and schedule the appointment. These are really special people. North County Eye Center. And a couple of business notes. Those of you who follow us, I want you to follow me on social media. Hey, if you're on Twitter, everybody's on freaking Twitter. If you're on X, X marks the spot. We want you to go ahead and follow me at Hacksaw1090, at Hacksaw1090. That way you'll be aware of everything we put up on our Twitter account. Also want to remind you that my website, it's all written. First thing you should turn to in the morning to get all the sports updates. You got to check my one man's opinion column today. You might not agree, but maybe you would agree. Hacksaw's one man's opinion on my lost sports weekend. I think you'll find it novel to read what I wrote. And also register to join Hacksaw's Insiders Group. It's absolutely free. It'll get you on our mailing list. And we want you to share, want you to subscribe. So that way, when you subscribe, you'll get the notifications of everything we put on our YouTube channel, and we put a lot of content on there during the course of the week, in addition to the Monday and the Thursday podcast. All that, and when we're done talking about the hot topics on the table, John Riley takes over, co-host with his best friends in what we call Fans Forum. John, how does that go?
Well, Fans Forum goes like this. You just have a question or comment. Type in your question for Lee in the live chat on Facebook or YouTube. We'll get you involved in Fans Forum. And by the way, Lee, you're talking about, like, follow, share, which we love to encourage our listeners to do that. But the cool thing is on Apple Podcasts, leave a rating and review. 5 stars if you think we're worth it. We got a lot of nice reviews there, Lee, and that's a way to kind of spread the love, spread the message.
Does that include those who are reading my column today?
Your column today is going to blow people's minds.
Okay. So give us a 5-star rating. Give us a thumbs up. As you can witness, we need all the help that we can get on our podcast. And, of course, tell everybody we're here Mondays at 1 p.m. Pacific, Thursdays at 1 p.m. Pacific. John, we move on to the second half of our Monday bonus podcast.
Yeah, NBA Summer League. We got some updates on some of our locals.
Yeah, some are doing good, some are not doing good, and some got hurt. Let's just do a quick review. The Lakers are winless right now in the NBA Summer League. Bronny James, in the most minutes he's played 29 minutes against Miami and then against Houston. 3 for 14 shooting, 0 for 8 from the arc. He's now 6 for 26 in NBA Summer League games, and the Lakers are winless. So he's overwhelmed. He's not struggling at all. I will say Dalton Knecht is playing really, really well. Last 2 games, scored 20 and 25. He's looked like he's found his shot. He's looked like he's found more comfort zones in terms of putting the ball on the floor, going to the basket, getting fouls, in addition to hitting threes. We talked about the Aztecs. Jaden Ledee, I watched closely Minnesota's first game against Houston, and he looked a little bit overwhelmed. He didn't do anything offensively, which kind of surprised me. He was first guy off the bench. He was part of the second unit. He played a total of 13 minutes. No points, 2 rebounds, 1 block shot, and 4 fouls in 13 minutes. So a little bit overwhelmed, Jaden Ledee, at this point in time. You send these guys into competition in the Summer League, and there's risk. Denver lost its first-round pick. He's gone for the year. Now, they had just acquired him right after the draft day. They've lost Deron Holmes, a 6'11 kid from the University of Dayton, ruptured Achilles tendon. Not good. In terms of the 1 and 2 picks, Zachary Sachet, the number 1 pick from Atlanta, pretty competitive, playing with the bigs, but the kid out of France, he kind of struggled at points in time, but I think he wound up with 5 baskets, maybe 5 rebounds, couple block shots. He was really active. The second pick in the draft, the other French kid, Alexander Sarr, really overwhelmed. I think he was maybe 3 for 11, couple of fouls, couple of rebounds, just that level of play of the bigs against the bigs. He just really had a tough time. I know it only counts as these were the first games this weekend in the Las Vegas Summer League for all these marquee players. So we'll keep an eye as we go in the next 2 weeks to see how the rest of these draft picks work. But Sachet was pretty competitive, and Alexander Sarr was not.
Well, you say that some of these guys are overwhelmed by it, but who's playing in the summer league? I mean, you've got the rookies that were just drafted or the free agents they've signed. You've got probably some of their G League guys, but are guys that are on the end of the bench on the NBA roster, are they playing in the summer league?
A few, but not a heck of a lot. Like there's none of the Lakers.
Yeah.
Veteran bench sitters. They're not part of this equation.
So if they're overwhelmed in the summer league, I mean, there's no way in hell they're going to be able to play in the NBA.
But you grow them. That's part of the equation. They are young. You teach them what it's like to be a pro. You put them on a weight training program, a dietary program, and you grow them. And you will show patience, obviously, for the guys up front. One guy that has really stood out, and he's a very checkered, controversial career, I think it was at the University of Illinois, Terrence Shannon with Minnesota. Holy cow, he's lit it up in the summer league so far. And he was an explosive kid, but he had a checkered past in terms of a lot of stuff off the court. But it may be that they wound up picking him later. He fell off the top of the first round. He got picked towards the back end of the first round. I don't know if it was the 30th pick, 31st pick, but boy, I watched him closely when Minnesota played Houston, and said, boy, this guy can play and do a lot of different things, going to the baskets, pulling up, shooting threes, playing defense. He's all over the floor. So sometimes you'll find a gem there, and Shannon, to me, has been the most impressive rookie. And of all the young players I've seen, I think I've watched 3 different games in the Las Vegas Summer League so far.
Well, let's go back to Jaden Ledee for a minute, because Mark Ziegler said that even though the numbers, which you quoted, are accurate, he was actually made a big difference when he was not carrying the ball. He was setting picks. Oh, yeah. He was aggressive. He was scrambling on the floor for loose balls, and his plus-minus was radically lopsided in the plus category.
Yeah.
So do you think maybe the Timberwolves are going to be patient with him?
Well, I think so. He's a street free agent. But the one thing that stood out to me was he did not get intimidated by the bigs who were jumping jacks. And those guys could not get to rebounds because they couldn't move him off the defensive post when he was going for boards. I mean, he was physically leaning on guys, and guys were going on the floor. And he was pushing guys. He was fighting guys who were trying to run pick and rolls around him. Offensive end, negligible contribution. So maybe they will just work with him and just use that 6'9", 250-pound frame as a defensive bully.
Yeah, well, but he can shoot too. So
I agree.
He can hit the shot from the elbow. That's coming. He's probably still nerves, right?
Oh, I think so too.
Yeah.
You're not going to make a roster decision on a quality basketball player after his first game in the summer league, but he was not an integral part at all of what they were running offensively. I mean, all his heavy duty work came at the defensive end. So that's the latest in the NBA. Bronny James. You did not give me an opinion about Bronny James 6 for 26.
That's just the biggest piece of crap. The whole thing. It's like legacy, nepotism. I mean, it's no wonder these players don't want to be signed with the Lakers, because they don't want to go play in that environment. This is just a disgrace because, I mean, Ledee is a better player than Bronny James. Ledee should have been taken.
Now, Bronny may have much bigger upside a year from now.
Yeah, but he's still, 6'1"? I mean, there's too many negatives there. I just think the Lakers are bending over backwards to make LeBron happy, and I think they're losing sight of the big picture to make the team better. There
was a statement, though, made on the weekend after their 4th loss in a row, and Bronny was asked, if this does not work out, what are you going to do? And he said, I'll go wherever the Lakers send me. That includes the NBA G League.
Yeah.
So he might be playing in the G League, in Ontario, for the Lakers minor league team.
With a 4-year guaranteed contract.
Yeah, with that. Nothing wrong with nepotism if you're on the receiving end.
Exactly.
Okay, we go from that. Hacksaw's Headlines.
Hacksaw's Headlines, the high-speed sports wire. Let's pull it up. Here it is.
Let's just talk about different topics on the table. I don't know if you watched golf yesterday. Scottish Open, what a phenomenal finish. First of all, I love, they were just outside Glasgow. That's where the Scottish Open is played. I just love the Scotland landscape and the wind and the breeze, and they were wearing ski hats like it was cold, and they were playing. Robbie McIntyre is from Scotland. This was a spectacular performance by him in the Scottish Open. He roars from behind and post the victory. I mean, it was really stunning. He hit a 41-foot uphill putt on 14 for a birdie that started McIntyre's run. And, of course, the Scottish native had everybody behind him. He got an eagle on 16. He birdied 17. And then on 18, needing the putt to win the tournament, he hit a 21-footer on 18. And the gallery in Scotland just went crazy. I mean, it was really electric. And all the name golfers just never could close on him because once he turned the corner, when he did what he did at 14 with a 61-foot shot, it was over. And then the question was he going to be able to chase down the leader and get the victory? And he did. And he just kept hitting big shot after big shot, and he had everybody behind him. So the Scottish Open is the springboard for this coming week's British Open, which is in Troon, Scotland. And I'm so fascinated to see, because they're going to wake up early in the morning to watch this sucker. I mean, like 2:30 in the morning, pal.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, because it's going to be televised live.
Okay.
Scottish Open at Troon Historic Course. And the matchup's going to be Bryson DeChambeau wearing LIV colors and Scotty Scheffler, who has dominated the PGA Tour. Rory McIlroy is there. Rory did well in the Scottish Open. That should be the door to open for him to go get something accomplished there. So that's kind of fascinating, too, just to see how that situation is going to play out. 158, I think that's the most golfers who have teed off in the British Open since 1995. So British Open, I love the British Open because you're facing very tough conditions on the golf course. You're facing a phenomenal field of marquee global players, and you're facing the weatherman. And the weather coming off the Irish Sea, it could be anything in the different hours of the day. You knew that. When you went to Ireland, you were drinking beer at the Guinness Brewery, and the clouds move through, and then it's raining, then it's sunny, and then it's hailing, and that's what those guys are going to face. So that is going to be absolutely fabulous. Tennis. Wimbledon just concluded. Changing of the guard, I guess, is now complete. Novak Djokovic, coming off knee surgery 6 weeks ago, forged his way into the finals, but he got run out by Carlos Alcaraz. It looks as if Alcaraz is the next star on the men's side in pro tennis, because there is no Rafa Nadal. There is no Federer, who's retired. Djokovic, at age 39, looks like he's probably at the end of the road, and Alcaraz looks to be the guy. I don't know who's the next star on the women's side. All the top seeds got knocked out. Some in the first round, some in the third round. None of them got to the women's finals. So that'll be fascinating to see. I think we're going through the changing of the guard. Soccer. Holy cow. This was a great Sunday. Oh, yeah. The championships in the European Championship. Spain wins it for the fourth time. England put up a dogfight to stay in that thing. It was really impressive. Spain scored early. Looked like they were dominating. England just manned up defensively. Suddenly there were turnovers. Ball was going the other way. The English had scoring opportunities. They scored on a mishandled pass in front of the goalkeeper. Spain came back, however, and won on a 2-on-1 break in the 84th minute. It was really impressive. And just to see these guys and what it means to them. Harry Kane was so exhausted. They pulled him at halftime, the English superstar. So they were really down. But Spain is brilliant. Spain is vibrant. And like I said, it's the fourth time they've won the Euro Championships. Today, King Charles at Buckingham Palace wrote letters to the head coach, Gareth Southgate, and to Harry Kane, the captain, saluting them on behalf of the entire country for what they did. Right on. Yeah, it was really cool. I saw a copy of the letter on a website in London, and it's just really cool about he talked about how they carried the flag so proudly, and they wore the Three Lions jersey, etc. So that was really neat because they had taken an enormous amount of criticism going into the tournament, and I don't think they've won European Championship maybe one time in the history of all soccer. So they got there, but they were exhausted getting there. We go from that to what happened in Miami last night, the Copa America Championships. Ugly incident before the start. They had to delay the start for an hour and 22 minutes because South American fans who did not have tickets broke down the gates to get in. And it was really ugly. The armed guards were there. They couldn't control the crowd. Copa's taking enormous national heat for how they failed at security and put so many people at risk by allowing all these people to crash the gates and not having security to stop this, not having proper procedure to allow the fans in there at that stadium in Miami. When they were done, I remember telling you on Thursday, I think it was, I said, how many times do you think Lionel Messi's going to get kicked? Because Colombia just plays like it's a street fight. Mm-hmm. And he got kicked and he got knocked out. He got knocked out 55 minutes in. He was done. And he went to the bench and he wept and cried because he was out of the game. We re-injured his ankle again, and he'd been hammered a couple times prior to that. And the refs didn't call it. They just let Colombia mug people. Apologies in advance. I don't know if there's any South American soccer fans who are on this podcast. They are the dirtiest team I've ever seen. I mean, they were violent tackles, spikes high, forearms to the back, hits to the throat. I mean, when they go up for headers on corner kicks, they were doing this. I mean, I couldn't believe it. And the referees just let it go. Maybe that's the way they play soccer in South America. But at the end of the day, Argentina won 1-0. One of their great veterans, Michael Martinez, scored the game-winning goal, and Messi just stood on the sidelines and wept like a baby, and then he was the first one that roared onto the field. And then you see all the players of the Argentinian team just weeping what it meant to them to win the World Championship. So just a phenomenal tournament. It wasn't the World Cup, but man, it was damn close to it.
Yeah, it was.
It really was. Let's talk about coaching situations. Team USA, a little bit surprised. This whole Team USA thing, the firing of Greg Berhalter, the insinuations in England that I've been able to dig up are that they cannot afford and are not going to be able to hire Jurgen Klopp, the legendary Liverpool and Dortmund head coach from Germany. He resigned Liverpool, or announced he was retiring from Liverpool at the end of the season, and it sure does not look like he is going to get hired. That maybe he doesn't want to negotiate. Evidently, he's going to take a full calendar year off. So they're going back to square one to try to determine what they're going to do. Team Mexico, I critiqued their roster before the Copa tournament began, and I said, I don't understand why you're leaving all these veteran players off there. Chucky Lozano, who is with the San Diego MLS club, San Diego FC, was left off. Javier Chicharito Hernandez was left off. They did not have Ochoa, their star goaltender. Anyhow, they just fired their coach, Jaime Lozano. They keep firing guys every year. There's no foundation. There's no philosophy they build on. The feeder program doesn't seem to be working, so Team Mexico seems to be in a lot of trouble. So, John, I threw a lot of stuff out there. If you wish to talk about the Scottish Open, British Open, Wimbledon, or talk soccer, the podium belongs to you.
Well, it's interesting if you're a Spanish soccer or a Spanish sports fan. It was a great weekend, right?
Oh, yeah.
Because you got Alcaraz, you got the Euro Cup. So, good on those guys. Did you see in the Wimbledon, though, that Djokovic was in the finals, but he had surgery on his knee like about 6 weeks ago.
Exactly.
Which is incredible.
Yeah. Well, again, if you have minor meniscus surgery, you could be back. NFL guys come back in 3 or 4 weeks. Baseball players, if it's minor, and evidently it was minor, and he was back for 6, but you had to grind through it. He did get a break, though, because in the semifinals, his opponent withdrew because of injury, so he never played a semifinal match. He had extra days rest there, but he had a tough time with the fans. They are anti-Djokovic fans. They bombarded him with criticizing, harassed
because of the vaccine and all
the
that.
whole vaccine thing, and he would just, he brought his tennis racket out and played it like it was a violin. And, after he won his quarterfinal match, he gave the fans back as much crap as he happened to take.
Yeah, and then going to the soccer matches, I watched both of those, and they were fantastic. And to your point, Kane, they showed him on the sidelines in the Euro final, just looking sort of flatlined, exhausted. And I was like, why is this guy not playing? And then to see Messi, and did you see his ankle swell up? Yep. I mean, it was really bad. But Argentina has had a great run for these last 4 to 6 years. I was surprised by the refs letting the players play, because you're right, it was rough. Colombia looked good. I was shocked they didn't score in that first half.
They had opportunities, but just could not put the ball by. Are you going to accept my critique that Colombia is the dirtiest team you've ever seen?
Well, it is Colombia, There's just some rough, tough guys in Colombia.
I wonder if we have any followers in Bogota.
Well, but it's cool seeing all these other South American nations and understanding a little bit more about the personalities and the pros and cons of each of these teams. I like it. And I like the fact that there's different sort of styles of playing depending on the nation or even depending on the continent.
So that's where we are. Hey, it's time for this. We call it Fans Forum. We got followers. We invite you to jump on board. This podcast is brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers, 9 stores in San Diego to serve you, and by North County Eye Center, offering free eye exams. I don't care where you live in San Diego County. Give them a phone call. Say, Hacksaw sent me. Want a free eye exam? Like to schedule that and get it done right now. John, we got people stacked up here on our Monday bonus podcast. Where do you want to go?
Okay, let's get some Padres comments in here. This is from Steve. He says, the Padres look terrible. Their stars aren't hitting. What will Preller do?
He's going to try to make a trade to get pitching. I happen to like the in-depth coverage that the UT provides of Kevin Acee and Jeff Sanders, and they play devil's advocate, and they write from their sources what they hear, and we talk about from my sources what I hear. They're going to have to make a deal to get pitching. They don't have enough pitching right now. Nobody knows the outcome of Darvish, and we're holding our breath because Musgrove, although he's throwing a bullpen session now, he's just throwing 15 pitches at 80%. Voomp. He's not throwing any breaking stuff. He's not throwing game-time velocity. So this is a long process, and he's going to have to throw some rehab starts in the minor leagues. So starters 1, starters 2 aren't there. Dylan Cease was just magical, and it looks like they uncovered a mechanical flaw. I mean, he came back and struck out 11, and I think he gave up 1 hit in his weekend start. But Vasquez is Vasquez, and I don't think you can trust him. And then the bullpen gets overused, and they're going to have to find a way to get a pitcher. The pitcher I want is Cal Quantrill from Colorado because I think he's more trustworthy. But I think there's a deal, at least one deal coming. The other question is, do they have any resources to be able to get somebody's relief pitching? Because they think they need somebody to help Suarez.
Well, looking at the Padres from a hitting perspective, you get Xander Bogaerts back. He looked pretty good, in his at bats. So now, who's the odd man out in the infield? It's probably Donovan Solano. He's not a bad trade chip. I mean, that dude can hit. He's hitting over 280 last I checked.
Yeah, but you're not going to get Quantrill for Solano. If that were the case, Colorado, which had enough players, would have signed Solano when he was on the street.
Sure.
So that maybe is a throw-in. Only time will tell as to what they can afford to pay and what they're going to get back in return. And then the other intangible, the guys up the highway, the Dodgers, they're going to make a deal. They may be going after the same, Quantrill at Dodger Stadium with those bats. And they've got the resources, and they don't have a problem taking on additional luxury tax payment salary. Interesting. Okay, Steve, thanks for joining us. Next topic.
Okay, let's go here to Dan, and he says the Judases are a 6-11 team at best.
He is making reference to the Chargers. At this point, I don't even know that I could pick the schedule and tell you how many they're going to win, because there's too many questions that have to be answered. I do think offensive line's going to be better. I happen to think moving Trey Pipkins inside to offensive guard, because his big problem was when he had right tackle, had to go out on the edge, and his mechanics, his feet he couldn't get him set because he's a big, thick guy. And he just could not hold up when he had to go out on the edge, and he get knocked backwards, etc. Inside a guard, this is his 3 square feet. That's all he's blocking, whether it's run block and he's a power guy, or whether it's pass block, it's 3 square feet. He's not going out to have to go get Max Crosby of the Raiders out there on the periphery. So I think they'll be better in that front. Does Gus Edwards hold up? What are you going to do about the young wide receivers? Or is it going to be pass catches by committee? I just think there's too many questions right now to indicate what kind of season they're going to have. And I think they got massive issues inside defensively and have had those issues for like 3 or 4 years in a row. I mean, there's no doubt that Bosa, Kilomac, the kid from Southern Cal, Tuiapulotu, that those guys are really active. And there's no doubt that an old dog like Denzel Perryman coming back, who he had been here early years of his career, he's going to help. And we'll find out how good Minter, the new coordinator, is in terms of putting people in right situations and what are they going to run and is it going to work. So to me, there's an awful lot of questions. It's way too early to say what they're going to be. When we get to the end of August, we'll have a much better indication. To me, the Chargers, they got Harbaugh and his resume, and they got Justin Herbert, and they got a lot of questions.
Yeah, a lot. And at 6-11 doesn't sound unreasonable. Mm-hmm. But let's go back to when Harbaugh was hired by the 49ers. Because I remember he had Alex Smith, and then they brought in Colin Kaepernick, and then it turned out to be great for a little while. But was Harbaugh successful in year one with the Niners?
Yeah, I think he was, and I think he wound up being 13-3.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, so and he was successful at Stanford, and that was not a program that had a lot of resources nor a long track record. I mean, John Elway at Stanford was 1,000 years ago. And he did a great job there, and he went in and he fixed Michigan. But again, he had a lot of blue chip players. He's a lot of number one draft picks at Michigan. He only gets one number one pick here. So it's going to be fun watching to see what the, quote, Judases do. Next question.
I love the Nick Canepa gloss.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go here to Casey. He says, Dodgers need a closer and another reliever to help the pen, and probably going to need another starter for the rotation if they're going to go far in the postseason.
Well, you got to get people back healthy, and that's what they're crossing their fingers on. Has not happened yet. Evan Phillips is really good, the closer, but he's been hurt. He's been on the DL twice already this season, and I was kind of stunned that they used him in the 6th inning of a game in Detroit. That monstrosity where they wound up losing 11-9. They had a 9-4 lead, and they lost 11-9 in the bullpen. So they got pitching depth issues, but I think they're going to make a trade for a starter. I'm not sure which starter it's going to be, but Andrew Friedman historically has always done significant player acquisitions with big salary contracts at the trade deadline, so maybe there's another one coming. And the guys at the bottom of the batting order are starting to hit, not with regularity, but Gavin Lux is starting to play like Gavin Lux used to play, and then we'll just see if Chris Taylor and some of these other guys come around.
Chris Taylor's had a really weird year. Yeah. He's usually very productive. But let's kind of have wishful thinking here. Let's say Kershaw comes back. Let's assume that he's solid. Let's say, wishful thinking, Buehler comes back and he's going to be maybe okay. And then you've got Paxton and then Yamamoto.
Who has thrown a ball for the first time just on the weekend. First time. But throwing soft toss in the outfield, it's a hell of a lot different than being on the mound at Dodger Stadium. So that's a project that maybe September 1st if there's no setbacks with Yamamoto.
So I wonder if Friedman might say, we're not going to trade for a big arm. Maybe we'll trade for relievers, but we're going to kind of hope that our starters come back.
Well, they're hanging on to first place because the Padres are so inconsistent, and the Padres have their own set of injury issues. I mean, they're still, 7 games ahead, and everybody's got games in hands on the Padres because the Padres have played so many games that go in 50 and 49. I mean, it's going to be a challenge to make up that amount of games in the standings. Now, maybe we're just building a roster to hope you can get to the wild card race, but that's no guarantee you're going to win. I mean, the Padres are playing .500 baseball. They're hot and cold. What makes you think in a 3-game series you're going to win them and move on to the second round?
You don't know. Like you say, it's Jekyll and Hyde. And we start to feel optimistic, and then we get frustrated and disappointed again, and it's an emotional roller coaster.
2 weeks. 2 weeks. More trades. They're good. They're going to start falling pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Next question.
Let's go to Steve here, another Chargers question. I'm curious how the Chargers can be good with no established receivers. That's very hopeful thinking.
Well, if they're going to pound the football, and they're going to run it more than throw it, then the pressure on the wide receivers is a little bit different. Still got to catch the ball. You still want yards after the catch. But if they're going to be a ball-control team and then let Herbert pick and choose select plays, I like Josh Palmer. I think he's grown a lot. He's been dinged a little bit, but he's 6'5", and he's a tough guy. I don't know what to make of Quentin Johnston because he dropped as many balls last year as a rookie here as he did in his last year at TCU. But boy, is he gifted. He is so big, and he's such a long strider, and he can beat coverage. But you got to hold on to the football. So, those are the two marquee guys right now. Everybody that I've canvassed in college football in the South says Ladd McConkey's quite a player. He's a kid out of Georgia, was a second-round pick. And he's a tough guy, and he can run that inside slot stuff, and he gets open, and there's yards after catch with him. Now, he hasn't done it here, and he hasn't done it against fast inside cover corner slot cornerbacks. So that's just going to be a learning curve process and procedure for him. DJ Chalk, now he'd been dinged up, but when he was in Carolina and healthy, he was averaging like 16 yards a catch, deep down the field threat. So they got a mixed bag of guys. There is no Pro Bowler. There is no Mike Williams or Keenan Allen that scared the holy hell out of cornerbacks. So, but if they're running the football and moving the football on the ground with the 2 or 3 running backs they've got, then maybe the pressure on the wide receivers to be stars won't be as great.
Yeah, I forget about McConkey. And you're right. He's legit. Now, this is kind of a crazy question, but going back, looking at all of Charger history and everything that you know about this team, who do you think are the 2 best wide receivers in the history of the team?
Well, people will tell you John Jefferson for the short time he was here. Wes Chandler was absolutely brilliant. Charlie Joyner was a very different type of receiver who caught an absolute ton of balls. Now, way back, old-time Charger fans, American Football League days, will tell you Lance Allworth. But that was such a different era, and that was so long ago. Modern-day Chargers, there's no doubt that Phillip Rivers had people to throw to, but he also had LaDainian Tomlinson and the brilliance of Antonio Gates, like Fouts had the brilliance of Kellen Winslow. But I think those historically are the greatest players. Keenan Allen was a great route runner. He didn't terrorize people except the fact he's going to run precise things, and you're going to have to defend precise things. And, Keenan Allen will, I think, probably deserves to be in the Chargers Hall of Fame once he retires. Mike Williams was big, and he didn't quite duplicate consistency that he had at Clemson, but he was hurt a lot. But he was still a really good yardage receiver down the field. He just he didn't play 16 or 17 games every year because he kept getting dinged because he kept taking hits. But I would say the Air Coryell era wide receivers are probably collectively the best. And the back in the day AFL Charger wide receivers, obviously led by Lance Allworth in the John Hadel era way back in the 60s. But, man, that's a lot of third downs ago.
It is. And you didn't mention Tony Martin, who was there in the 90s.
But that was for a brief period of time.
Remember back, it was probably after the Super Bowl era, and the Chargers signed David Boston. And we all thought, this guy's going to be a stud. He's going to be a great. And that guy was like a head case. He was like Milton Bradley of the NFL.
Yeah, he's from Ohio State, and his dad played in the league, and it was a great physical specimen, but there was just too much stuff going on with him, and you couldn't trust him, and missed practices, and they finally said no mas. They got rid of him. Next question.
Okay, let's go here to Callan. He says, Lee, you might know this better than me, even though I've announced in minor league hockey for nearly a decade. How exactly does the entry-level contract, ELC, actually work?
It's part of the collective bargaining agreement. Every rookie who gets drafted can be signed to it's a 3-year minimum deal. It's called entry-level contract. And it's like a 2-way deal. He gets so much if he's in the minor leagues. He gets the bare minimum if he's a first-year NHL player. I think the NHL minimum for first-year players, because of the union agreement, is $725,000. If you play in the minor leagues, if you played in the East Coast Hockey League, you might get a contract that's maybe $75,000. In the American Hockey League, which is the top AAA league, if you will, the AHL guys can get anywhere from $100,000 to $250,000. But the higher-priced AHL contracts are really few and far between. But it is all structured by the collective bargaining agreement, and in essence, it's a 2-year contract.
It sounds like, the NBA 2-way deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Callum, good question.
Yeah, it is a good question. I agree. Okay, let's go here to Chris. And he says, Huge trade rumor. I'm hearing the Dodgers about to get Kevin Gausman and Bo Bichette from Toronto for a package centered around two hot kid arms, Dalton Rushing and Dave Roberts.
Well, Dalton Rushing possibly, and there's a young catcher that stalled at Double-A by the name of Diego Cartaya. And he's had a bounce-back season, had a miserable season last year. He's had injuries. There are rumors everywhere that they're going to blow Toronto up. In fact, there's rumors everywhere they're going to blow Ross Atkins, the general manager, out. And the manager might get fired too. But that would be taken on salary. But that would be a typical contract that Andrew Friedman would make. And Gausman, who used to pitch for the Giants and actually was a pretty competitive veteran, and was in Baltimore, I think, before that, and maybe even Texas or Detroit. But Gausman's the type of guy the Dodgers would get, who'd be plug-in, doesn't have injury problems, takes the ball every fourth or fifth day. Bichette's had a tough season. I actually think he's on the disabled list right now. His numbers are not what they were. And if that happens, then it leads to the next question. Are they going to trade Vlad Guerrero? Because his name has also been mentioned out there. I find it hard to believe Toronto would trade Vlad to the Yankees. You're going to trade with the enemy in the division unless the Yankees just give you a volume of young prospects. So, connecting the dots, that makes sense that maybe Gausman is the type of guy they'd go after because they can afford to make this deal because they got so many other guys in the farm system.
He was good with the Giants, for about a 2 or 3 year stretch. But isn't it amazing how Toronto Blue Jays, we thought that they had all these kids and they're all the sons of ex-major leaguers and they were going to just run roughshod over the AL East, and they just keep struggling.
Yeah, I mean, they got Vlad Guerrero, Kevin Biggio.
Well, he's with the Dodgers
now.
Yeah.
Bo Bichette. And then they spent a lot of money on George Springer, who I was surprised left Houston to go there. But they've had a lot of injuries to their pitchers. And then they got pitching injuries and then guys who just are not performing everyday lineup and guys who get dinged. And just it's not a good season in Toronto. And I mean, they are holding Ross Atkins, the general manager, responsible. I'm not even sure that he's going to survive when we get to the offseason.
Every major league team's got injuries, guys underperforming, contract problems, holes in their roster. This is going to be a dynamic 2 weeks.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's going to be a lot of wheeling and dealing at trade deadline. Thanks, Chris.
Okay, let's go to Greg. He says, Lee, is there a group out there trying to bring the NFL back to San Diego?
No, because there's no stadium. There's no site for a stadium. One of the biggest disappointments I had was, A, the Chargers left and screwed everybody along the way. B, we had a proposal. It was called the Soccer City proposal, in which Soccer City was going to build a soccer stadium and go get an MLS team and then maybe allow San Diego State to move in. And after 5 years, Soccer City was going to give the soccer stadium to San Diego State and let them operate it. But part of the Soccer City proposal was they had a 15-acre tract of land that they were going to reserve if somebody wanted to come in and build an NFL stadium and try to get an expansion team or lure somebody, it'd be there. Well, that proposal from Soccer City got voted down. San Diego State's proposal wound up winning. San Diego State took over the entire 143 acres of the Qualcomm site, and the availability of that land for a stadium's gone because that's going to be a park or a river park, or it's going to be academic buildings, going to be research center, dormitories. That's the long-range vision of what Qualcomm has become. So there's no land available immediately. And you can say, well, rich man, he can go buy the land. Well, if the rich man's going to buy the land, say they're going to buy land up in Oceanside because that was floated out there as a locale, you have to spend the money there. You have to spend enormous money to build a stadium, and then you're going to spend money for an expansion team? Where's all that money going to come? I mean, outside of Jeff Bezos, I don't know very many people that have that kind of wealth to do all three of those things that need to happen. So I think, sadly, I don't think we're ever going to see the NFL back here, at least in our modern lifetime.
I agree with you. But has the NFL, are there whispers of expansion?
No, but you have to know that there's an enormous amount of money out there to be made as an expansion franchise. You just have to pick the right markets. And I'm not outside of San Diego. I don't know what other right markets are out there. Hell, you're not going to Fargo, North Dakota. I guarantee you that.
Well, maybe it's like some of these international locales.
Well, that's been talked about. I mean, they are talking London expansion franchise. They are talking Mexico City expansion franchise, but I think that's down road. I don't think that's in the immediate near future in the league.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. Okay, let's move on. Let's go to Angel. He says, All-Star break couldn't come at a better time for both the Dodgers and Padres. As for the Angels, they've been a surprise team. I was sure they'd be 33-65 at the break.
Yeah, I think they have 41 wins. I don't know how Ron Washington got this roster to 41 wins. I think the record's 41-56, something like that. They just don't have enough players right now. But, I mean, they have developed some guys that you really like. I think Zach Neto, the shortstop's really become a fan favorite. Logan O'Hoppe, a little bit of pop in that bat, not hitting for great average. He's the catcher. He's played very well. There are people calling the Halos about trades. There is a lot of conversation about Taylor Ward, the left fielder, possibly being moved. They were shopping Joe Adell. He's got some power. He's not hitting for average at all. And this is really deep into his career. I think the shocking thing, I read a piece, 3 years ago, 2021, they drafted 21 pitchers. All 21 of the draft picks were pitchers.
I remember that.
Only 2 of them have gotten to the major leagues, and both of them got hurt.
Really?
Yeah. Chase Silseth is one. He's the only one that got there. He got hurt. The other one got here and was never healthy. They traded a group of them away. I think there's 9 of them still left from the 21, but they're all buried in the Angels farm system. None of them are viewed as major league pitchers. So, I mean, when you spend all those picks on arms and hardly anybody gets there, not good. And that's why they're in the mess they're in right now.
Well, that goes to player development and their coaching system and everything else.
And that spins then back to Artie Moreno and philosophy.
Yeah, and resources and where you invest. But Ron Washington has done a great job there with the Angels. But remember, he was a consideration for the Padre job. Mm-hmm. The Padres hired Schilt. I mean, just imagine for a moment that Ron Washington was the manager of the Padres. Do you think the Padres would be better or worse than they are?
His ability to communicate with the players and teach players. But he, as much as he may have input in developing the players still got to do it at home plate. And the veterans, these are the guys who have not really had great seasons and not hitting. So I don't know if he would have made a big difference. I think the big issue is that Washington had off-the-field problems, and Padres' A.J. Preller just does not get involved with guys who've got off-the-field issues. And I think indirectly that's the reason why Ron Washington was not hired in San Diego. And I like Schilt. I think he runs the clubhouse. He's got strong philosophies. He makes too many excuses to me because he never holds anybody publicly accountable. But again, the players in the batter's box and players on the mound are the ones that have to perform. And in part, that goes back to the general manager. Who did you give me, and how come they're not playing well?
Well, I like Schilt. I like him a lot. Here's another comment, also Padre Dodger related from Richard. With the Dodgers having unlimited resources, what could AJ offer at the deadline? No farm system capital to work with.
Well, he's got farm system capital, but the ownership has said we're not trading any of these young players. And they're making reference to the top 2 pitchers in the organization are really struggling, Richard. DJ Lasco, who was coming off elbow surgery as a high school pitcher, is not pitching well. Rob Snelling is just stalled at Double-A. He's not pitching well. Those are the 2 arms. The third player is Ethan Salas, who's hitting under 200 at Class A ball, but he's only 18. And the fourth player is a kid here up at Lake Elsinore, Leonardo DeVries, who's pushed his batting average a little bit over 200 right now, but he's really young too. I think he's 17. So, I mean, Padres' philosophy is push them out there, force them to play a little bit above their heads, see how they cope with it, etc. And the ownership has said, well, stop trading. I mean, he's traded half the blue chips in this farm system already for the transactions that he made to get Luis Arraez, etc. So I don't think they've got a lot of resources to give unless you're going to part ways with Hassan Kim. And Kim can be a walk free agent, and they've got a lot of shortstops in the organization and the system. Maybe you trade Kim, maybe you trade Campusano, because he has shown flashes that he can hit, and he's a kind of a workhorse behind home plate, although he's not an established everyday major league pitcher. Maybe you trade major league catcher, maybe you trade the catcher. So AJ's kind of limited, and AJ's limited by the luxury tax. They've told him you're not going over the threshold or getting near the threshold, so that limits whether he could take on a big salary. I do think they're going to make a deal. I'd like to see him get Quantrill because they'd own his rights for 2 more years. But again, Colorado is not going to make the Padres better. just to make them better, Colorado's going to want to extract something from San Diego.
Well, there's definitely a game of musical chairs going on in the infield and the DH spot. They got one guy that doesn't fit. Trading Kim would make all those pieces work, but he's at the end of a deal. He's going to be a free agent. I don't know if that makes sense. But, you know, the Padres, they've got their starters, but we don't know what to expect from them. There's no guy like in AAA or AA that's you think is waiting for his opportunity.
Yeah, I thought if Snelling had another good year, and he was pretty good last year going from A to AA, I thought, okay, he's going to arrive here. But he's not going to arrive here now. He's 2-8 with an ERA of over 7. So, I mean, he's just kind of hit a wall where he is, and you just have to work through that. And young guys get overwhelmed, and you got to work through that and make them more complete ball players. But so the Padres, they've got some limitations here. I don't know where it's going to go. All I know is we're 2 weeks out. And if you're scuffling and struggling, you'd rather make the best trade you can now if you can get 2 or 3 starts out of the next guy you're bringing into your rotation rather than wait till July 31st. Maybe you're better to do that. I do think the Dodgers, this is interesting because they played so badly and they have so many pitching problems. I think the Dodgers are going to be the first ones to dive in and make a deal because they got the assets to do that.
They do.
Okay,
they're
on
loaded.
We go. A couple more here.
Okay, let's go to David. Talking a little soccer. He says, they need to do a better job about the conditions of the pitch used for the World Cup. It was bad for Copa America and possibly caused Messi's injury. They put sod over the artificial turf.
Yeah, it was a real problem. And then they watered the sod, and it was really, the players were skidding. And that, you know, that's how you get hamstrings. Or in Messi's case, he didn't get hit. Now, he got kicked prior. He got killed prior. Just terrible way Colombia plays. I mean, spikes up all the time.
Yeah.
And so he went down with an ankle injury. He was down for almost 5 minutes. They played shorthanded as they administered to him off the field. And they went back on, and when he was running, his foot slipped. And he'd already had ankle problems even all the way back with Miami and MLS. And he went right down, and he was in just enormous pain. So, Copa's taken a lot of crap. Field conditions in some of the locales, and the whole ticket distribution thing and security, at least in the Miami scenario. It was fascinating, though, because they were drawing 70 to 80,000 in some of these venues for the games. I mean, soccer in America, to me, has really, really arrived.
Oh, I 100% agree. And I think it's great, you know, considering that, it's an international sport. I think it's fantastic. Now, the stadium where they played in Miami, that's where the Dolphins play, right?
Hard Rock Stadium.
Okay, so that's why they had, I guess, the turf underneath. That's what they normally use there. Interesting. But yeah, I saw the field, and I remember seeing the sprinklers at halftime. And it's interesting when on television, it's hard to tell, but the field was so perfectly manicured. And every time they fell, they had shards of grass all over them, so they must just done the lawn mowing the thing. But I'm just amazed that they keep it in such great condition. But to David's point, there were cases where there were divots and a lot of problems, and that's what took out Messi. Yeah.
And they said the field was really slick, which meant they watered it a lot. Now, granted, it's not an open roof stadium; it's a hole in the roof stadium. But it was hot and it was humid, and then they watered the hell out of it. And the footing, the players are going down the whole night. So they've got between now and 2026 on different venues to figure this thing out for the World Cup.
But that'll be World Cup people, not Copa America people, right? Now, the stadium where Lionel Messi plays in the MLS is a different stadium, right?
Yes, that's an MLS-built stadium by David Beckham. They built that a couple of years ago.
So that's what, maybe like 30,000 capacity, something like that.
All right, next question. Let's go to social media.
Yeah, let's do social media. We got a bunch of guys here in line. How about F1? Let's talk F1. And this is from Peter. He says, that race was lost by stupidity more than won by greatness. At the end, it was only 1.4 seconds splitting them.
Oh, he's talking about Lewis Hamilton upsetting Max Verstappen at the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. We talked about this last week. But the fact that Hamilton was able to be running in the top 4 or 5 with a car that's not produced all season long is amazing. Now, Verstappen has had accidents. Verstappen's had screw-ups in the pits. Hamilton, right place, right time. And he wound up posting the victory. If they had to go 2 or 3 more laps, maybe somebody would have caught him. But it is interesting. It's a first win since 2021 for Sir Lewis. And, of course, he's going to leave Mercedes here at the end of the season to go to Ferrari in a very controversial move. But it's really interesting to see how Verstappen right now is being viewed as almost the enemy. Like, all of a sudden, nobody likes him. And he's dominated the sport for the better part of 2 years with Team Red Bull. And, there's insinuations that maybe they should part ways with this guy. So I don't know if the guy's ego has gotten totally out of hand. He's had so many incidents the second half of the season. He's not dominating the races anymore. So interesting to see where it goes in F1. But, for Sir Lewis, nobody expected. I don't know anybody, myself included, and I follow F1, expected Hamilton was going to do anything before he reached the end of the road with Mercedes, and he left to go to Ferrari.
Verstappen was winning too damn much.
He was running all the races.
Yeah, so it's nice to see a little change of the guard, but it's really the old guy that's back with Lewis Hamilton. But this is kind of a crazy question. But I remember as a kid back in the 70s or so, there were F1 cars that had 4 wheels in the front and 2 in the back. Have you ever seen those before? Like Elf Racing? Does that ring a bell?
No.
Okay, I got to go look that up.
Sure you weren't drunk when you thought about that?
Well, I don't know. I think maybe I was a little kid. I was probably paying too much attention to my slot car racing track.
But no, that's a reach. I've never, ever heard that one. But F1 has grown. It is so expensive to operate. What they charge for a city to host is absolutely phenomenal. But it's grown. I mean, from a network perspective, it is must-see TV, especially in the European venues, which is why now they're pushing to come here to the States. And, they in soccer are trying to make an impact here in the U.S. And now we're going to be up to 3 F1 races. And the goal within a couple of years is to have 5 events here in the States, in addition to the one they have in the Canadian Grand Prix that was in Montreal. So it's... this sport has just exploded. And their personalities, and it's really just a very, very different sport now than it was 5 years ago, and really different than it was 10 or 20 years ago, and it was great back then.
Hey, well, I'm enjoying it. Yeah. I'll tell you what. Can we get one more question here? Because this is about the Home Run Derby, which is going to happen tonight. And this is from Do You Love It? He says, I hate how they turn the Home Run Derby into this rapid fire thing. The crowd used to be able to admire each long ball hit, and now the next pitch is thrown before the last one even lands, and the hitters are out of breath. Let the big boys go out there and launch some for the fans and keep it to 2 rounds. And P.S., ditch the hideous uniforms. Let them wear their own unis.
Here. Let the home team wear their home jerseys in whites so we get to see all the colors. Let the road teams wear their road grays with their own logos. I think that would be cool. They've invoked new rules. A lot of the guys who've been in the Derby are not in the Derby this year. The injury factor is obviously one. And they've changed the rules. And it's not going to be head-to-head competition. I go up and I take my swings. And then the next batter, John Riley, goes up. He takes his swings. And the third batter, our dog, who is our mascot takes his swings. And then they'll just take the top 4 guys, and then they'll advance, and there'll be semifinals. And also they're ratcheting down the pitches, how many pitches you can swing at. They're going to give these guys a chance to stand in the box, catch their breath before the next ball. No, Do is absolutely correct. It just became rhythmic. Throw it, hit it. And, I'm a player. I'm a manager, a general manager of a team who's got my star player in Home Run Derby. I don't want my guy to suffer an oblique injury because he's trying to do too much. So this one's going to be ratcheted down and handled a little bit differently.
I love that the polar bear, Pete Alonso, this is a big deal for him, and he makes it a big deal. That's exciting. And then I also go back to remembering when the All-Star game was here in San Diego, and Will Myers had his brother pitch to him, and he got beamed by one of the balls. This is typical Padres, right?
Yeah. But who's not there? Obviously Ohtani, and he leads baseball in home runs, and Soto's not there. When you talked about the All-Star game in San Diego, I sat down the left field line by the Western Metals building, and I watched, at that point, he was called Mike Stanton, Miami Marlins, just crush home run after home run. It was just phenomenal. But again, the throwing grapefruit's up there, and he had a good guy pitching, and he just kept hitting bombs. It was great for the fans. But, if I'm the general manager of my team, I don't want Manny Machado to suffer a rib cage or an oblique injury trying to win Home Run Derby. And that's a big issue, and that's why they changed the rules.
Remember Josh Hamilton?
Sure.
That was a fantastic display in the home run derby. Probably my favorite one ever.
So is it a gimmick? Yeah. Have they found something? Yeah. It's cool. Now they need to structure it for the safety of the players and still make it a great event for the fans. Good question. Hey, thank you for being with us. We hope you've enjoyed our Monday bonus podcast. We're here Mondays at 1 p.m., Thursdays at 1 p.m. We invite you to become a regular. We invite you to share. Tell your friends what we're doing on this podcast. And, of course, we invite you to join us. Hacksaw's Insiders Group. I want you to subscribe also to everything we're doing on our YouTube channel. Our podcast brought to you by DIXIELINE Lumber and Home Centers, 9 locations to serve you, and North County Eye Center offering free eye exams right now. Just call North County Eye Center and register. Tell them Hacksaw sent you. John, enjoy the All-Star Game, Home Run Derby included tonight. We'll be back here Thursday with more topics on the table, and NFL training camps start to open the end of this week.
Are we going to talk about your lost weekend?
We can just briefly mention this. Okay. What I'd recommend, you go to my website, read my column, my one man's opinion column, because it was a cross-section of sports and society, the assassination attempt on Trump, and then all the finger-pointing and everything that developed on social media in the last 48 to 72 hours. To me, it's horrible. And I hate where we are as a society. I hate what politics has now become the focal point, trigger point for all the stuff that is happening. I was really saddened over the entire weekend by what I saw. John read my column. John's a sports fan. I'll let John give you a reaction. Was I right or was I full of crap and wrong for doing it?
It was a great article. And you mixed in all of the major sports things that are going on, with the soccer and Wimbledon and baseball, everything else, with a lot of the political news of the day. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, because it was a blending of the two. Now, there's a lot of fans out there that don't like it when Hacksaw talks politics. So you're going to piss off some people. You're going to make some friends. But I think it's a really good article that everyone should read.
Thank you. Just go to my website. It's still up there. One man's opinion column, and you can get back to us on Thursday and say, agree, disagree, you're full of crap, or right on, Hacksaw. Hey, thanks for being with us. Hope you enjoyed what we did. Thanks for joining us on our Monday bonus podcast. Have yourself a great day.
Join us again for Hacksaw's Headlines on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. And find the audio version on your favorite podcast app.
Touchdown, San Diego!
For more content, go to LeeHacksawHamilton.com.